So thank you, Sam, for being on the podcast. Hello, everybody. So this is our first of hopefully a very long series of podcasts dedicated to AI readiness for Salesforce. In this series, we'll run a few episodes. We'll have guests helping us understand how companies, culture, people, technologies, Salesforce itself are preparing for AI. With all the aspects possible, hopefully touched on different episodes by different expertise that is brought through with our guests. So without further ado, thank you very much, Sam. You're our first guest. Very welcome on this podcast. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Sam Chappell, CTO at Performa IT, so a Salesforce SI partner, and very happy to be able to say as well that I was the lead architect on the first implementation of Agentforce in Europe. So that was a really exciting, cool achievement to be part of. So yeah, really excited to talk to you today, Luca.
Well, 100%, and quite exciting, and maybe self-explanatory why we invited you to be our first guest. A revolution is taking place in our ecosystem, and who best to tell us a bit more about what is going on, and are we ready, and are companies ready? We ready in the ecosystem? Is Salesforce ready to welcome AI in the form that is coming to life right now? So actually, let's start there. Sam, why don't we? Can you tell us a bit more about how you took on this responsibility? How did the conversation with Salesforce and the client take place, and what were the steps that led to this amazing project?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been working with Secret Escapes, who's the client, for must be around about 5 years now, and we were brought in specifically to work on the Service Cloud element of their Salesforce implementation. So we were trying to upskill both in-house teams on that, and then also bring up the functionality and really make it a best in class. And through that journey of around about 4 years, I've been building up the knowledge base and the interactions in there, and building up the omnichannel routing and everything that you would expect within a service implementation within CRM. And that set Secret Escapes up to have a really good foundation for Agentforce and AI when it came out. So Secret Escapes were approached by Salesforce actually to become one of the partners for the pilot program for Agentforce. And what that meant is, before we all knew what Agentforce was as a product, they were being talked to around the potential benefits and would they like to take on this new AI functionality that was coming out. And that's when we got involved with the conversation there as well. So probably about 6 months before anyone had heard of Agentforce, we were starting to work on the project there. And it started with a desire to help improve the menu-based bots that were Einstein bots that were available on the website at the time, and make that more conversational. They're a luxury travel brand, so that personal feel is really important, and this seemed like the perfect use case to start to look at Agentforce there. And that's where we started to have all the conversations there, and it was a really exciting prospect to be working directly with Salesforce product over in the US as well, being able to actively feedback on the product, give our thoughts on what was working well, what wasn't working well, and get a real insight into how it was being built. So yeah, I think a little bit of luck, but I would say all the hard work that went in before it set them up in a place to mean that they were a no-brainer to trial it in Europe.
Exactly. So let's talk about that. You just mentioned it. They were a good target because they were set up, with a lot of hard work, getting to a place where they were ready. Or Salesforce and you guys felt, there was something happening that made them ready. So can you decline that? So, we talked about service, we talked about a long history of using Salesforce in the right way with your support, setting it up in the right way. So I would imagine there's a component of data, there's a component of culture, of innovation and technology. Give us a sense of the ingredients that made them feel like they were ready, and Salesforce feeling like, yes, these guys should be in the pilot.
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of elements to that, as you've alluded to. The first one I would always say would be the culture. So there was a real drive for innovation, and that is something that I think is really key when looking at new technology. Is having an open mind. It's not going to be perfect the first time it goes in, but that you've got the ability to see where it's going, and make sure that what you're defining for those use cases that you're going to start building to is really clear and everyone's on board with it. The second point, as you said, they've been using cases for a while, and I'm going to talk about cases specifically for service. They had a lot of data in there, and that is brilliant. There was some cleanup that needed to be done, and there was some effort as soon as we heard about the potential for being on the pilot. There was some effort that went into making sure that all the data is going to be in a good shape. But where they started to adopt Einstein features before then as well, a lot of effort had been put into thinking about, how clean is the data? Do we have all the data we need? Do we need to go and fetch data from, the internal booking software, for example, and make sure we've got that information? There was a project that we'd done, a couple of years earlier to pull some of that booking information in, which made a big difference in having some pre-built connections that we could use to extend what we wanted to do in the future as well. And just the other thing as well, I would say particularly for service, having a decent bank of knowledge articles, and a proper publishing process behind how they're getting updated and funneled and pushed through made a real big difference for getting a really quick implementation of the sort of back and forth conversation around knowledge articles really, really quick. We ended up doing that in 3 weeks, from getting hold of the product to going live. It was 3 weeks.
Wow.
Just for the knowledge article piece.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think, we could probably do that quicker now that we know more about Agentforce, and we've been working on that. But I think even still in software development terms, a 3 week turnaround is pretty quick.
So a couple of very different angles that I want to pick up on. One is, you said the culture was probably the one thing that made them a good candidate to experiment with. So that's a culture of innovation and experimentation, right? So being ready to fail or to accept that it's not going to work the first time. And how do you think they achieve that? Is that leadership? Is that years of I don't know, is it because it's a fun company, because they sell travel and amazing destinations? What is it?
I think it's a mix of all of those. So I think there is a real passion behind the client to put the customer first. They want to make sure you have an amazing journey, and I think that then naturally lends itself to thinking about, okay, what cool new stuff can we do to help people, which is really key. And I think that's something that lots of companies can adopt if they haven't or don't do already. There's a big excitement from the board level as well, which I think the key for any big large transformation project is having the board on board. Makes a real big difference to how the messaging is layered down throughout the rest of the company. And there was a big excitement from the customer service agents as well. They want to make sure that people are happy. And one thing that was really key to that was making sure that everyone was involved from the start.
Yeah.
So obviously there was a big push for innovation from the tech side of the business, from the IT department, and a really brilliant sort of messaging from there and coordinating everything they needed internally.
Yeah.
But we also made sure that, as soon as we got our hands on the agent and they could see something, we got it in front of the customer services team, because they are the people that are answering those questions to their members day in, day out. And really, they're the people that can tell us if the answers that the agent's generating are correct or not. And I think getting everyone involved makes such a difference to making sure that people are really excited about it, and that only makes projects more successful.
That makes sense. Look, give me a sense of the scale of, how many articles are we talking about? How many people, how many customers, how many interactions expected? What was the landscape where Agentforce was deployed first with the articles? Yeah,
so there were around about just over 200 articles already.
Okay.
I think Salesforce's recommendation is over 100, and I think
for good learning, you mean over 100?
For a good base within the model for it to learn from it, and also have enough answers to come back with across the sort of the variety of questions you might get from a customer.
Yes.
I think that is probably around about right. I think sometimes people will think maybe that's, well, we don't have 100 knowledge articles, or we can't necessarily get all that in. But I think if you look across your business, you look at your FAQs on your website, you look at all these different things. A project we'd done earlier was pulling the FAQs off the website and holding them within Salesforce, and that put another 100 articles in just off the back. So I think that there are lots of quick wins to get that information on board and in there. And the other thing you can do is just talk to your agents, your existing employees. What sorts of questions are you getting, and pulling through? And it won't take you long to get that level of information. So that was the first side to it. In terms of interactions, we were looking originally at being able to answer around about 15% of the interactions. So we're not trying to, blow away the water and take everything on at once. What we wanted to do is, if people are dropping off, we want to sort of try and make sure that we can answer their questions and focus on that, and sort of look at that deflection rate in and around there. And without revealing too much, we've absolutely achieved that. And the second sort of side to that was then looking at sort of decreasing the amount of time people spent on there to get an answer back as well. So decreasing the average handle time. And we doubled what we thought we'd do on that as well, which is really, really cool.
Wow. And are we talking about like hundreds of conversations a day? Is that, in the thousands?
Yeah, so it's, I think on average, I need to double check. But yeah, certainly in the hundreds.
Wow. Okay. So big impact there. From we talked about data, and you talk about an effort that went on before to bring data into, or expose data into the CRM from a different set of database, basically from a different database. Is that the case? Is that necessary? Was Data Cloud then part of the picture, or not because of this?
Yeah, so there were, and I always think of this because I've had this question quite a lot from customers and things as well. So I think there's two sides to it. The first one is, and I'll come back to this probably throughout this whole conversation, is there a real use case to need that data? So what we focused on is chunking it down into 5 key use cases that we wanted to do. The first one was answer questions with knowledge, and then we wanted to expand that out into additional bits of information. So specific information about your booking, what your flight details are, for example, how much luggage you've got. And then we wanted to focus on cancellations, rebookings, things like that, which obviously get massively more complex as you get into that. And that's kind of where we started to go, right, we know we want to do these. They're not going to be out the bat, in the first iteration of this agent, but we know we need that data for later. So we're going to start doing that now, populating and connecting up what we need to do. Some of that was done with Data Cloud. Some of it was done with existing integrations with platform events. So it was kind of, if we knew we already had an event bus that we could use, we're going to use that because that's the existing architecture, and we'll continue to use that. If it's information that we're going, we don't necessarily need to show this to people internally. They would very rarely go and look at it. But we need to have access to it. That's when we were sort of starting to use the Data Cloud functionality to pull that in, and which gives us the option, if we need to later down the line, of showing that information within the CRM itself as well.
Very interesting. Talking about that particular use of the technology, and broadly speaking, the use of both old technology, our good old Salesforce and the CRM, a relatively newer technology with Data Cloud, and then the brand new, which is represented by Agentforce. How did you feel like you were, and your team at Performa IT, were the right combination of skill sets and expertise, or maybe with the right attitude to learn, to take on this new challenge?
Yeah, so we looked at Data Cloud already, so we're happy with that. Obviously, the core CRM clouds, we've got lots of people that know that inside and out. And then, we've got a couple of people within the business, myself included, that are very, very interested in AI and have been for a long time. And do a lot of reading up and learning externally as well. We've been playing around with connecting ChatGPT up and things like that within Lightning components within the org and things like that to see what we could do and how we could do. So when we got told about Agentforce, it made complete sense as to why Salesforce were doing this, and I had a lot of answers to the questions we had around data security when we were doing it. And so I think it was absolutely, I think we did some work with professional services, Salesforce Professional Services, their global AI team on this project as well. They were involved. And we had a conversation at the start, which was, they said, how involved do you want us to be? Do you want us to take on the whole thing and you learn, or do you want to do it and then and feed back to us? And we went, absolutely, we want to do it. All we want to know is can we pick your brains around what you know about it? And it was very much through the pilot stage, we're all learning together.
Oh, wow.
And so it was it felt like we're very much at the cutting edge of what is new. And I think for any technology team that's working, that is the most exciting prospect you can possibly have.
It's a dream scenario, right? It's a dream scenario.
So we had team members fighting over who was going to work on the project. And myself included, I typically am less involved in day-to-day delivery of projects with my role, but I was first hand up. I was like, I'm running this project.
So let me ask you a question with that expertise in mind, with it, hands-on expertise in mind. So what are the things that you guys did wrong? And if you could go back, you would change them. And broadly speaking, what are the biggest mistakes that you see happening in the world of getting ready for AI or embracing and deploying Agentforce?
Yeah, so I would say there was only one thing for me that sort of shone as the thing that we've changed in our process with the relevant or subsequent deployments and implementations we've done with other clients since, and that was factoring how much testing was going to need to happen. And you'll see that now that Salesforce has released the testing center for Agentforce. They identified that was something that was hugely time consuming. You
didn't have that. You didn't have that luxury.
No.
You were running your own tests.
It was an Excel spreadsheet and lots of people writing, scenarios over and over again and checking manually in the agent, checking again manually, going back and forth. We weren't expecting that we'd need to do automated testing for it. I mean, we thought we probably would, but we didn't think it would be worth the time investment. Looking back in hindsight, probably would have been. But yeah, that was it. It took, any software project you would expect to have a good amount of testing in there. It was at least double what we thought it was going to be. So it was a real big commitment. I spoke to Salesforce Professional Services after the project. We had sort of a bit of a debrief, and we're all sharing notes around everything we'd learned across the board and looking at that, because we're all still trying to sort of create the best practices. Product's still changing every few weeks, it feels like, and so we're constantly in touch. And they said, every other partner since it was released globally, and the internal professional services team went, it was about for every day of actual hands-on making changes, it was about 5 days of testing. So it was a 1-to-5 ratio, and they said that was across the board. Everyone said the same thing, and I think that's why testing centers come out. So that's probably the biggest change. But the biggest thing that I think people are also facing, I think we were quite lucky in that we were very proactive with thinking about this at the start. But I have seen it in other areas, is trying to take on too much as well. Trying to boil the ocean with the first implementation of Agentforce. It's the same as any other technology. Start small and grow it. I think that's the best way to look at doing it.
And which is a great point that you're making. Thinking about that experience of pioneering, being part of the very first implementation in EMEA. What impact do you think it has, or it had, on your business and your team? And broadly speaking, what is, in your opinion, the opportunity that is in front of a company like Performa IT, but broadly speaking, the ecosystem that operates now with Agentforce, front and center?
Yeah, it's made a massive difference for our business. We've had a lot of new clients that have come through, working with AEs on Agentforce implementations and deals there. I think it's made a massive difference for our team in, they were everyone's always excited to learn. It's a big part of our culture that we have here at the team, but I think it's like adding rocket fuel into it, that everyone's just been all over it. I think everyone's got an AI cert in the business now, sales team included. Everyone's just on it, really excited about it. So there's been a massive opportunity for us, absolutely. I think it's probably been one of the biggest shifts we've felt for a long time, within that real drive towards a product. And it certainly put us on the front foot of trying to start to build out what best practices look like. Ever changing, of course, but I think that's been really fun to work on.
Like a blueprint of step-by-step approach. And
what can go wrong, what goes well, how to make that work really well,
how to be ready, topical.
Absolutely. What makes someone ready for implementation? It made us go and look at our systems and go, right, what do we need to do to get ready for it as well? And I think the biggest thing is the opportunity for creativity that it's created. Everyone's thinking about what new use cases could we use this for? What could we use this for? What could we change? People are thinking about internally within our business. We're thinking about our current clients. We're thinking about industries that maybe we don't do as much work with as our core ones, for example. That's been really powerful, and I think it's created almost a new focus on innovation of how we can, do a bit more blue sky thinking about what the opportunities could be and how we can make those changes. And I think that's been, so brilliant to work in that culture and help foster that. In terms of, the opportunity for everyone else, I think, I'm sure we'll probably touch on it at some point, but I think it's sort of it's something you've got to dive into, because I think AI is going to be here to stay. I think, or always think of Salesforce as a toolbox. Any technology really is a toolbox, and AI is another tool within that toolbox that's going to be used. I think, once you start to see some of the really big companies that people use every day start to integrate AI into their customer journey, that's the expectation for customers from that point onwards. And everyone's going to expect you to have some kind of AI in your business, talking to them or wherever it's placed, and it's going to be the expectation as opposed to the innovation, I think, within the next year, certainly.
Oh, wow. Well, I think definitely the narrative that we hear, from Salesforce themselves has been definitely going in that direction, to the extent that maybe they're opening themselves up to some criticism with regards to shifting too far, too soon into the world of agentic AI, maybe leaving behind some of the more current, CRM related needs. Have you seen that? Do you feel that's the case? Do you feel like Salesforce is doing the right thing? How do you feel about that, having worked, hands-on on the first implementation?
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly see why they're doing it. I've not felt, and I don't know if we'll feel this for a little while. Either way, I've not felt like there's been any drop off on the new features that are coming out in core CRM. I think from all the conversations we've had with Salesforce, they are absolutely still fully committed to that, and really want to push that, as that is the core of the business, and that's what makes all these agents tick. I think, from a business sense, looking outside and in, I think it makes absolute sense as a product company to be, really focusing on that. I think they are ahead of the game with Agentforce at the moment, and it only makes sense to sort of focus on that momentum and sort of become that big player
and double down on it. I want to pick up on the point that you make, that they're still thinking about and creating this new product, this new wave of innovation centered into their CRM. And I think that probably is what makes it successful, or will lay the foundation for its success going forward.
Yeah,
fantastic. Look, I wanted to come to a wrap up in a way of our conversation. It's been super interesting to understand more about your journey and how you guys were ready, how your customer and why they felt they were ready, and us and the rest of the ecosystem are also ready. I'll leave you to kind of give it a sense altogether, but I think the key themes that come out, if I have to sum them up, are one, readiness definitely at the leadership level with an innovative mindset, readiness to embrace innovation, fail even. And I think the second point is centered around that innovation is a step-by-step approach as well, an ability to understand a pace that needs to be taken when embracing new technology. Then we talked about data, and I think that's very crucial there. Readiness for secret escapes and probably for the rest of the organizations that you're working with, centered around data readiness and having the right data. And then we touched on creativity, which I think was the highlight of the conversation, thinking about the opportunity and what it does for your team, what it does for the ecosystem. Your answer was centered around creativity, which is unleashing new thinking across the organization and across both your clients and your internal colleagues and employees, which is amazing. So if you had to sum up what's just behind us with this first implementation and all the ones that you're working on right now, and what's ahead of us, how would you would you frame that as an opportunity?
Yeah, so I think, as you said, leadership buy-in is key, and I think getting leadership to think about, what those problems are within the business. I know most people within the business, at leadership level, will know exactly what's wrong and where they need to update things, and it's pulling that, making that visible, and getting everyone, I think, thinking about what could you do to help change this, and that's where those innovative ideas come out. Obviously, all of that needs to be grounded in the business case. There's got to be a use case for this, and I think making sure that you can see a clear return on investment or a clear metric that you're going to be able to use to measure this is so important. I think that's where people try and bite off more than they can chew. With implementations of Agentforce is think, right, we've got a problem, let's fix this first, or revolutionize this, and then we can focus on how we expand it and bring that out. That's been one of the most important things. The other thing that I think I annoy people by saying is I don't think we're in the AI era. I think we're in the data era at the moment. Everything that we do with AI is underpinned by the data that we've got available to work with. We can use AI to improve the data quality. We can use it to train the data, but it's the same as an employee, right? If you train an employee badly, then you're not going to get the outcomes that you want from that employee. And it's exactly the same with any AI. If you give it bad data, which is essentially bad education, then it's not going to give you the outcomes you want. So I think that's the big area that people need to focus on. And I think that's the area that's going to take the longest to get up to speed with. But if you have a clear use case, you can focus on the data that's going to help that use case first. And that's going to be a lot less time than trying to fix the data across your whole org. If you're just focused on answering questions with knowledge, let's say, to start with, or outreach with the SDR agent, something like that, you can focus on the quality of the data that's coming into your leads. You can focus on the quality of how well your knowledge articles are written. And then that's a much smaller project to work on, which gives you the benefit of unlocking AI than trying to update all the data and everything within your org. And the other thing that I see a lot of people are starting to implement and that is going to be key for business is putting AI within your technology plan and creating comprehensive data governance plans and building not only a culture around creativity and innovation with the AI sense, but a culture around pride within the data that you have within the system and the understanding of how that can benefit everyone by having that up to date.
Pride. I love it. The use of word of, being proud of your data, basically, and your discipline around capturing the right amount of data and the right set of data.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I ultimately, that is what's going to drive everything. And I think that's something most businesses have known for a long time, based on their reporting metrics and things. But I think if you have been a little bit behind in that, now really is the time to focus on getting that up to speed.
And that will unleash the ultimate creativity, I guess, business impact through new thinking.
Yeah,
new opportunities.
Absolutely. And that is that's what's going to drive all the new opportunities we're going to see in the space. I think we're very much at the start of the journey of seeing how far we can push things, and we're only going to discover that more with the new product enhancements that are going to come out. With now that testing can be done through the test center, that's going to help speed up. So you're going to see more use cases delivered more quickly, and then again you're going to get that sort of pipeline of creative ideas flowing through and helping build out what the new age of business is going to look like, I think, over the next 10 years.
We're definitely in for a very, very interesting journey.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, Sam. This was an amazing conversation. Thank you for sharing your experience and your knowledge and your understanding of this new exciting era that is opening up with agentic AI and Agentforce. Hopefully we'll all be ready to embrace it. Also thanks to your recommendations and your advice in this episode. Thank you for being our first guest. Thank you everybody for being with us.
Yeah.
Goodbye. See you next time.
Awesome. Cheers.